chemists. Welcome to the Honors Chapter 8 test hints. It's afternoon for me. It's actually like 5:30 in the evening here. Who knows when you're watching these? But I'm going to go through and kind of hit the high spots here on the Chapter 8 test hints in order to help you review. Test hint number 1, evidence of a chemical reaction. So this could be a question about any of the several types of pieces of evidence we have for chemical reaction. And you know, we asked you about this in one of the Moodle questions from the videos. This is something that we did way back in Chapter 2, things like heat or light given off, formation of a precipitate, mechanical energy being produced, electrical energy, things of that nature. In, say, an acid-base reaction, it could be a liquid being formed, you may have a gas being formed. Basic explanation of evidence of a chemical reaction. Question number 2, how to balance a chemical equation. And I have in parentheses there in the test hint the steps. So this is just a general question about, hey, if you were balancing a chemical equation, what would you change? And don't you ever, remember John, don't you ever change the subscripts. The part that you can change when you're writing a balanced chemical equation or trying to balance a chemical equation, of course, is the coefficient. But make sure those subscripts are written correctly first. Test hint number 3, how to write the word equation for a given reaction. So say I asked you to tell me about the reaction between sodium and chlorine. Well, you know that a skeleton equation would look like this, Na plus Cl2, chlorine's one of those magic 7, forming NaCl. That's a skeleton equation, not with questions asking, but I'm sure it'll be answering some other question. Balancing this by putting in coefficients, because don't you ever touch the subscripts, gives us a balanced chemical equation, but how would you turn that into a word equation? You might say something like this. Solid sodium reacts with chlorine gas to form the ionic solid sodium chloride. And that is a white crystalline solid. You have actually seen this in one of the World of Chem videos that we showed you early on. And we talked about this a lot with the Born-Haber cycle for that particular reaction. But this will ask you to interpret a reaction in words. So look for the descriptive information. Test hint number 4, how to identify the state of matter in a chemical equation. Well, you should know what all these little things in parentheses mean. S for solid, G for gas, L for liquid, and the ever-popular AQ for aqueous solution. We've done a lot of reactions in aqueous solution because we have our ionic solids that don't really react until we dissolve them in water, and then they're ready to go. Test hint number 5, how to balance a given equation. That's going to be a hint probably for a lot of these questions. And you'll have several questions like this, and it'll be like, what coefficients correctly balance the equation for this reaction? So let's go back to the example I have here for sodium reacting with chlorine to form sodium chloride. And I'll probably buzz through some of the other questions similar to this quickly because you're going to have several like this. So here's a skeleton equation. What set of coefficients would balance it? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, or any of another number of other combinations. Okay? So this should be pretty straightforward. If you can count and tally your atoms, which I know you can do because I've been watching you do that for 2 weeks now, I think you'll be fine. Test hint number 6. How to identify the correct balanced equation for a specific type of reaction. Okay, you're going to need to know the types. And you have, of course, your composition or synthesis reactions. You have decomposition. You have combustion. You have single replacement, also called single displacement. replacement or double displacement. I'll kind of use those interchangeably there. That's an N. All right. So for your answer choices on this kind of question, you're going to have several different balanced and or skeleton equations, and the question is going to ask you about a specific type. So if it asks you about a synthesis like this one is, you need to recognize that you need to put things together in order to synthesize something. If it asks you about a decomposition and your answer choices look like this, where we have two elements or small compounds coming together to make something bigger, well then it clearly is not an answer choice for a decomposition because that's a synthesis. You should know what's happening in combustion reaction. An element or small compound reacting with oxygen in the air to form metal and or nonmetal oxides. Single replacement. One element comes along and kicks out something from a chemical compound and takes its place. Leaves the element that was in the compound off by itself. In a double displacement reaction, two ionic compounds, or an acid and a base, break up, switch cations to form two new compounds, either two ionic compounds, or in the case of an acid-base neutralization, of course you know you got a salt and water. That's a salt, S-A-L-T, not necessarily sodium chloride. Number 7, how to identify an equation that is not correctly balanced. Well, this test question says, which equation is not balanced? Test hints are very telling sometimes. And you'll have a series of equations. A not balanced version of this one might put 2's in front of everything, where it looks like that's sort of right, but that wouldn't work for the chlorine. Or there might be coefficients that are correct except for the fact that they could be reduced. Or they just might be coefficients that make absolutely no sense in that equation. That's just a tally. I think you'll do all right with that kind of stuff. Test hint number 8, the general form for each main type of reaction. Okay, so in a synthesis reaction, we would have element A plus element X forming compound AX. In a decomposition, we would have compound AX forming element A plus element X. I know, you don't really need to watch me write these down because you have them right in your notes and you've been looking at it over and over and over again. But just on the off chance that maybe some of you have not looked at those notes yet, shame on you. We'll have them here summarized again. So, hydrocarbon or element reacting with oxygen gas to form carbon dioxide and water. That's a combustion reaction. Single replacement. Let's do this in a different color. Single replacement, we have element A and compound BX forming compound AX and element B, or we could have a halogen replacement where a new nonmetal comes along and replaces the second element. And of course, a double displacement, AX plus BY forms AY plus BX. These are typical letters that are used to show you the general format. And you need to be aware of them. You need to know what happens in each kind of reaction for several questions on this test. Number 9, what happens in each main type of chemical reaction? Oh my gosh, I think I just said that. Okay? Follow this, another question, maybe in a little more detail than the one before. Yeah, it's a question in more detail, but nothing unusual. Number 10, what happens in each main type of chemical reaction? I think I just asked that. So we're going to be asking you about several different types for a few questions in a row here. Number 11, test hint says how to identify the type when given a balanced chemical equation. And it's that same thing for 12 and 13. So